Hi, I'm Nicole Alvarez for KROQ, and I'm here with Billy Corgan. I want to start really quickly by saying that I spent time with Aghori Mhori Mei. And first of all, when I read the title, I could pronounce it right away. So I was very proud of myself because I saw the video of you explaining it. But what a beautiful title. The album 3 times made me very unexpectedly emotional. And later when we go to the album, I'll tell you which songs. But the guitar work is outstanding, Billy. And it's such a confident album. It's outstanding. It really is.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. We really, we're difficult in our own weird way, but we really wanted to make an album that people just felt really warm about. It was just that time in our lives to sort of make peace with a bunch of stuff, including our past. And somehow this record seems to bring all that together. So when I hear that, it feels really good. Thank you.
So you were on the heels of releasing a very ambitious rock opera, and you didn't have to do anything for quite some time. So a lot of people were expecting this in maybe 2025. The fact that you felt compelled to write it immediately and while on tour must have meant that you had some sort of inspired urgency. Why the quick turnaround?
Well, when I was, real quick, when I was making Autumn, we started during the pandemic, and like everybody, we were all locked inside, and we were freaking out about what was going to happen and how long is this going to last. And so in making the record, the whole concept, we ended up doing some kind of more, I guess, quote unquote, traditional pumpkin style rock on the record, but it was really in the character of the story.
Okay.
But doing the music, I found I was like, I still really enjoyed playing guitar like this kind of old school wayish thing. And so even before I finished the record, I told my partner in crime, which is Howard Willing, who makes the records with me. I said, we got to go right into another record, and we got to make a rock record. I just feel that.
Okay.
And so when I started meditating on it, I was like, we really need to go back to the way we used to play, not to try to recreate it, but to sort of to
redefine
put
it.
ourselves in the right frame of mind or something. And
Okay.
and it just took a life from there. So what you heard is that started like even before the last record was finished being recorded.
Is it fair to say, were you trying to reframe the original mindset, like the old school
Yes.
mindset? Yes.
Perfect. That's exactly it.
Okay. That's what I
On
thought.
paper, you would think, you pick up a guitar and go, let's do like a Siamese Dream type song. Not at all. You got to get back into the mindset that you were in when you wrote those types of songs. And then those types of songs start coming out of you naturally. It takes a hot second.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to make people laugh, but if you've ever done a thing where you dated somebody for a while and then you broke up for a while, but then you get back together, the relationship's not quite the same because you've broken up. You got to almost kind of figure out like a new version of the old version.
That's a good thing though, because you bring with you the lessons that you've learned. So you go back to the old school, but with a new version of yourself. It does take a second, right, to get your footing.
Yeah, because there are some stuff that we did that, it doesn't age well, So even if you pick up a riff and go, oh, this is pretty cool, you're like, it's a bit musty.
Okay.
But can we figure out a different way to say this, And somehow over time, it felt like kind of, you cross the street and kind of pick up one thing and then go to the other side and try it, which is really how those records were made back in the day. It was a lot of experimentation. And then it just kind of took on a life of its own.
So, of all the things I kept reading, you kept mentioning the phrase, you can't go home again. And I wanted to talk to you about that phrase. That's a phrase that I've always carried since I was a teenager for some reason. I want to know when it impacted you and what it has to do with this record.
Well, when I was successful in the 90s and I had money and I had status, I fell into that temptation to go back to where I grew up, thinking that somehow people would treat me differently or look at me differently. And I learned really quickly that nobody gave a shit.
Wow. So was that
weird.
Humbling?
Very. Like when I put out a poetry book, I think in 2004, I was doing these autograph signings and I would do an autograph signing, say in Boston, like on the night there was a playoff game with the Red Sox, right? And the guy from the bookstore would come and say, this is the biggest autograph signing we've ever had, ever. And he would name check, famous authors, right? So in the hubris of the moment, I decided to set up an autograph signing at the mall that I used to hang out in Bloomingdale, Illinois when I was a kid, right? There was a Borders or something. It was the worst attended book signing of the entire country.
Oh no.
I think the signing only, every signing I was doing was lasting like 2 hours, right? This signing, I think, lasted 15 minutes. There was like 30 people there. Like nobody cared. It was like crazy to me. And even to this point, I'm just trying to be funny. I've never been invited back to my high school that I graduated with honors. I was an honor student. Never been invited back to my high school ever for anything. Not a charity function, not a come talk to the music class about your experiences. That shows you the world that I grew up in, this pernicious, bitter world.
Yeah.
So when I did try to go home again at different times in the 90s and the 2000s, it was like getting slapped in the face with a fish or something. It was like,
Yeah.
hey, kid, this part of your life is over. There's no making peace with this. So when you're in a super successful band and most of the people you run into are fixated on a certain era of your musical life, you just learn that that's what they're fixated on. You can't talk them out of it. You know what I mean? That's what they care about because it's when they lost their virginity or when they jumped off a roof or something, right?
People also feel safer staying in like the nostalgia of their lives for some reason. People just feel
Sure.
safer there. I get
I,
it.
I respect it. You know what I mean? I'm not here to tell you should think differently. I wish it was different, but I'm not here to tell you you're wrong.
Right.
So as an artist, you just move on into other pastures, good and bad, and you take your lumps as you go. And it's not as simple as Bob Dylan talks about in his book Chronicles. He would make these records, and people would try to convince him to be 66 Bob Dylan again, and he would try to give him Bob Dylan 66, and he's like, it's just not that simple. You cannot. I'm not that guy anymore. I'm not on Adderall and driving in a 66 Buick. It's 1982 or something, right?
Yeah.
It's just different. The clothes are different. The hair is different, or the hair is gone, whatever, right? So, but I became fixated on the idea. Okay, I know I can't go home again. I know for sure I can't go home again. But what if you tried? What would be the results of what would that movie look like? Is it one of those sad Michael Moore documentaries, you know what I mean, where the water's all bad and people are dying? Or what does that feel like? Is it a sad thing? Is it a happy thing? Is there something kind of beautiful about trying but failing? And so that was the spirit that we made the record under.
And it could be all of those things. Let's get to the record because I love it so much. So Aghori Mhori Mei, of course, like a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, I immediately did a deep dive on the internet to try and figure out what each word meant. And I found this Reddit site where they're trying to they all think they know. The Reddit site is really funny, by the way. The things that they're saying on there are hilarious. But I want to let you talk about, and I never ask any artist about album title, but this one is stunning. So I want to know a little bit about it.
Is the phrase cipher? It's kind of a cipher. You got to play with the letters and you got to play with the order, and you'll start to kind of get it.
Okay. So it's 10 songs straight up, and the first thing I noticed was the guitar work. One of the things that I love about the Pumpkins in particular, when I listen to your music, I'm not in the 3D anymore. I automatically go into another dimension, and it's fantasy, and it's beautiful, and it's scary, and it's dark, but it's illuminating. It's all of those things. It's a dream world for me, and you captured that right away. Track number 1, Eden.
Yeah, Eden.
From the second it starts, I was very haunted, but then that guitar jolts and boom, I kind of knew from the first few steps of this record that you knew exactly where you were going. So tell me about Eden.
It just kind of came out of a jam, and once we figured out it was one of those types of songs, because somewhere along the way we stopped doing these kind of long movie songs. If anybody knows Siamese Dream, there's songs like Soma and Hummer and all these parts, and it's very proggy. So we sort of gave ourselves permission, okay, if we're going to kind of try to go home again, I guess we got to do these kind of songs. But are they going to be good? Does it have that feeling? And by the way, are we going to say something new, or is it just going to sound like we're trying to be the old band or something? And somehow that song just leapt out of the speakers, and it's got 14 parts in it and solos, and I can't wait to play it live. I can tell you that. Every time I hear it, I'm like, oh my God, I want to play this live so bad. Can you imagine a show starting with that song? It's just going to be like
Yes,
so
I can.
epic.
And I did. And I did. And also, we'll get to this, but the way you end the album honors the beginning of the album. It's like just so good. Here are the three songs that I got unexpectedly emotional. And by emotional, I was like bawling. It was Saigomi, Pentecost, and Who Goes There. Those three
Okay.
songs whoosh, penetrated my soul. And I want to know, that was just my general experience. Tell me about some of the energy that you put into this and some of the feelings that you had yourself making these songs and then listening to them back.
Well, I think, part of it, and I think what you maybe unconsciously recognize is there's certain tonalities that we used to play with that were both sentimental but also sort of sad.
Who Goes There is
Melancholy-ish. I don't mean the record. I mean the word melancholy, right?
okay.
We were really good at that. It's the way we would kind of do it. So going back into that languaging, I felt like, wow, it's 30 years later or 25 years later, and I'm standing on the same street and playing these same types of chords, but I'm saying something different. You know what I mean? It's the wisdom or it's the heartache of like, wow, it didn't turn out the way I liked. Because as I said in a recent interview, I mean, if you would go back in a time machine and talk to me in 1995 and tell me, hey, by the way, this is the way your life's going to turn out, I would have not believed you for $1 million. I was so sure my life was going to turn out completely differently.
In a good or bad way?
In a good way. In a good way. I mean, the heartache that I went through between 1996 or so and 2012 or so was like, it was like something out of a Kafka novel. Everything from, business people turning against me, band problems, those are obvious. Those are always hard to deal with because it's the family of the band. Lawsuits, friends that you thought were your best friends just completely abandoning you. People who used to ask for 20 tickets when you come to town not only don't ask for tickets anymore, they don't even want to see you for dinner. You go through this whole like, what happened to the life I thought I was going to have?
Yeah.
And of course, I think that's for everybody. I'm not saying I'm special in that. I just
It
think
definitely is.
I convinced myself that I was going to have this other life. And like a lot of people who grew up with a lot of trauma, you end up recreating abandonment and all these types of things. So it's a really hard lesson to learn. But I've also been blessed, and I have an incredible wife. My children are fantastic, and I have such a happy home life. And I think it's important to also point out that James and Jimmy also have children and a very happy home life. So even though we've been through these hard times, including with each other, the fact that we all have this family now, both behind the scenes and we're back together as a family, it feels good to play that kind of heartache sound, but have something fresh to say, like good and bad, or good and not so good. But it feels like it's from a perspective of humility and appreciation, not the arrogance of youth. Like, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Listen to me. I'm the Pied Piper as we all go off the cliff together at the end of the 90s,
I've seen you in many roles. You've been a hero of mine forever. You're an artist. You're a humanitarian. I love you in the wrestling world, all of that. But my favorite role that I've seen you in, and I got to see it firsthand when you brought them here to KROQ, was fatherhood. I feel like it softened you up a little bit. I don't know if I'm correct in saying that, but it's a beautiful shine that jumps off of you when you talk about family and whenever I've seen you with your kids.
Oh, thank you.
How has that changed you? They're adorable, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all credit to my wife. She's such a great mother, and we're so blessed. Me and the children are blessed that she's the sort of the rock of our family. But to your point about me, I think I am a softie. The world made me hard. The music business made me hard and crazy. And my children forced me or allowed me to go back to who I really am. And best way I could say it to anybody, whether you understand me or don't understand me, is when I look at my kids and I look at their future, everything else seems so second, like way down the totem pole of the priorities. So how people view me, whether I'm winning this fight with this critic, and it seems so silly to me now that I was that guy and fighting these wars that meant nothing except maybe only to me. So my children have helped me reorient and say, look, you being available and you being somebody we can be proud of is so more important than anything else. And so it allows me to walk through life with the grace that maybe I didn't have before. But it's not to say I didn't have it. I didn't feel it. I just felt like people were going to take advantage of me. And to be fair to myself, people did take advantage of me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I mean, I love where the band is, but there's been times where people sued each other. You know what I mean? We didn't start a band to one day sue each other. You know what I mean? We started a band to rock. When it gets into all that stupid stuff, there's a lot of heartache, and I caused it too. I'm not saying it's their fault. We were all part of the problem. So I hope that makes sense the way I'm saying
it. It makes total sense. I think this is a record that both old school Pumpkins fans are going to love and appreciate and be surprised with in some parts. And new fans are going to be like, fuck yes. I think you made an excellent record. So at the end of the day, if you were to answer the question, can you go home again? How would you answer that?
I think you go home again, but you're going to stand on the curb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't quite go in. I'll tell you one quick thing before we go, right?
Yeah.
Not too long ago, my childhood home, the home that I spent the most years in, the house where I was abused a lot in and all that stuff, was being sold. And it was being sold, was being listed as Billy Corgan's childhood home for sale.
I think I remember this.
Yeah. And I'm still crazy in there. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy this house. I'm going to tear it down. I almost bought that house and tore it down.
Damn it. What stopped you?
So if I'd done that, at least I could go home again and stand where the house used to be.
That's right.
But the house is still there. It's all been rehabbed and looks all nice online. So I went home and I just stood on the curb and I sang a nice song. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
That is the best. That is the best thing you could have possibly done. Before we go, just two quick questions. One of them is, for a lot of us, music is our escape. And thank you for providing that. In this constant 24-hour vicious news cycle and this insane world that we live in, how do you keep your mental health in check without letting the gloom and doom be what's the main character?
I think that, and I've been through some serious mental health struggles, almost killed myself multiple times. I'm so grateful I didn't. I wouldn't be talking to lovely you today, but
thank you.
It's important to have something that's bigger than yourself. So if that for you is God, if that for you is family, if that for you is community, heck, even if it's an artist that you really, really like, use that inspiration to bring the best out of yourself. And when I was super depressed somewhere in the 2000s, I remember talking to a therapist and I was like, look, I'm going crazy here. Something bad's going to happen. And they suggested I do charity work. Now, when I was super depressed and lower than low, the idea of helping someone else seemed completely crazy. Like, how could I help someone? I can't even get out of bed. But something about the act of charity or compassion or giving of another seems to sort of dispel the cloud. And one of the greatest things that ever happened to me when I was a youth and going through all this abuse at home and everything was I started volunteering at the old folks' home. And I would go there once or twice a week. And all they wanted me to do was sit with the aged who'd been abandoned by their family and would cry because their daughter didn't call them anymore. And all they wanted to do was have someone sit, hold their hand, and listen to their story. And it helped me get through my hard years of childhood because I was like, wow, there's this whole other world out here, and I'm not the only one going through stuff. It wasn't that it was misery loves company. It was like, I'm not the only one going through this. So if you can find it in yourself to do something nice for someone else, even if you just pick up the phone and call someone that you love and say, I love you. I appreciate you. You're such a light in my life. It will make you feel better, even though it doesn't have anything to do with you. It's crazy how it works. Trust me on this. It's like a secret. It's like a hack. It's like a life hack thing.
I agree. You're an excellent participant in the human experience, I must say, Billy Corgan. Last thing, are you ever curious as to what your fans or your friends' favorite Pumpkin song is? Do you ever ask people, hey, what's your favorite Pumpkin song and why? This is just a curious question of mine.
Sure.
Because I've always wanted to tell you mine. I don't know why.
Oh, please do. But to finish your question, no, I don't usually ask. Honestly, when I meet fans, and I get it, they want to tell me, I saw you here. But what I really want to know is I just want to ask them how they are. I learned so much from talking to people.
I love it.
And once you get past that first minute of awkward, like, oh my God, it's you. And I was like, I just say, even today, I was walking down the street here. I say to people, say something. I said, how you doing? How you feeling today? Oh, we're coming to your show. Oh, great. Where'd you come from?
Yep.
It's amazing. People, I drove 4 hours to come see you play. You know how humbling that is?
Yeah.
That somebody would get in a car, drive 4 hours one way, 4 hours back just to see a concert. It's like, wow. And that's the kind of thing that you stare at your phone and you think, my God, this world's so insane.
Yeah.
And then you walk down the street and somebody's like, oh my God, I've been a fan for 25 years. And I brought my daughter who's never seen you play and we drove 4 hours. I mean, are you kidding? That's like, it's amazing. So to talk about me in that sense seems silly, right? Like, well, what's your favorite song? It seems
well,
like.
No, I'm going to give you a different perspective really quickly.
Sure.
I think it's a great conversation starter. And since you love conversation, for example, if you were to ask me what my favorite Smashing Pumpkins song is, it's always been and will always be We Only Come Out at Night, period. And you could ask me why. And I could tell you it's because it reminds me of me and my friends at a time in our youth when the only thing that mattered was sneaking out of the house at 11 o'clock at night in Miami and going out and the world that we lived in. And then from there, you can ask a million different questions.
Sure.
So I do think it's an amazing conversation starter and a way to get to know people better because we attach it to a memory of ours.
Do you know how that song was written? Do you know that story?
Tell me. I love that song so much.
So, do you know what a zither is?
No.
Or an auto harp?
I mean,
it's like
I could
the
use
thing
an
you play at school where it looks like a little weird harp and you press the key and it plays a chord. You press another key, it plays a different chord.
Okay.
It's like a grandma thing, right?
Right.
So I bought one because I thought I might be able to use it on the album Melancholy. And the band laughed at me. And they said, why the hell would you buy a zither? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, well, that's a waste of money. So I got so mad, I took the zither home that night and I wrote that song on the zither and I brought it in the next day, totally finished with all the words. And that was my way of saying to the band, fuck you.
Well, fuck you is right. That is the song of my life. Like, you don't understand. It takes me back to this place. And I've always wanted to just share that with you for some reason because I talk to a lot of people and not a lot of them bring up that particular song, but that's my jam.
Thank you.
That's
all right,
my
awesome
jam.
talking to you.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you on the road.
Awesome. Cool. Bye.